Hi, I'm Julie Johnson with Firebox Training. Today I'm going to show you how to create a very simple OBIEE 11g repository, and then we're going to make it live. So the first thing you need to do is get a little bit familiar with your database. So what I'm going to do in here is just open up a DOS prompt, and the database that I'm working with, I've got my BI sample schema, and the password also happens to be BI sample in all uppercase letters. And now what I'd like to do is just get an idea of what tables are available to me, at least the ones that I own. So I'm going to do a select table name from user tables, and let's just order by one. So we put this in alphabetic order. And of course, I'm not going to create a very complex repository. What I'd like to do is just create a repository that contains some time information, as well as maybe the products and offices, and of course some kind of measurement such as revenue. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a repository offline, and then I'm going to create a connection to my database from there and pull in the necessary objects. Okay, so what I'm going to do right here is just go up here to Start, All Programs, Business Intelligence. Here's my BI administration. Okay, so I'm going to create a new repository, and I'm going to place this repository. How about I put this directly under here? I'm going to just create a directory called My Files. And then under My Files, I'm going to just recall this. I'm going to call this sample repo. Okay, so sample repository. Okay, so now that I've got that, okay, as far as importing metadata, yes, I'm going to import some tables and other metadata. I'm going to set the repository password. Okay, so this is where we're setting the password, so just, set it to something that you'll remember. And then we hit Next. And as far as the connection type, this is actually an Oracle 11g database, so I say OCI 10g 11g. And the data source name, I can either put in a variable that points to the data source, or I can just put in my connection string, which you can always find in your tnsnames.ora file. So I know this looks rather complex, but really all I did was I found that in the tnsnames.ora file, which you find under the Oracle Database Home Network Admin directory. Okay, so in here, the schema that we're tapping into is BI sample, and as I mentioned, the password is BI sample in all capital letters, and then I hit Next, and now we're going to pull in the default metadata. So now I hit Next, and here is the BI sample schema. I'm only interested in a few of these tables here. I'm interested in, how about the customers? How about the offices? Revenues? And let's see if there's anything else here. Oh, products. And maybe some employees in here. So now that I have those selected, I'm just going to hit the single arrow to pull them in. As far as the connection pool name is concerned, I'm going to just call this BI samp connection, and now I'll hit OK. This will just take a few seconds. Okay, so now you see these guys right over here, and now we hit Finish. Okay, so on the physical layer, these are the actual tables that exist on the physical databases. In here, these are tables. I like to make a habit of creating aliases for each of these tables. The purpose of creating an alias is so that I can use it in different contexts. Okay, so I like to have the only control we have over the ordering is by ASCII order. So what I'm going to do is give these names like D01 underscore and then whatever the name is, D02 underscore. So they'll have them all lumped together. So let me first create an alias for this guy right here. I'll right click on it, new object, alias. And I'm going to call this D01. D stands for dimension, by the way. And this is going to be customers. Okay, I'm done with that. Now let me go on to the next one. See how the icon is a little bit different? Next one here, I have my employees. I'll create an alias for that. D02. Employees. Okay, next we have offices. D03. Products. D04. And then revenue is actually a fact table, so let me right click on here. We'll create an alias and call this F01 revenues. Okay, so now that we have that, what I'm going to do is take a look at my diagram to see what kind of relationships are on here. So I'm going to hit my control key to just highlight these guys. I'm going to right click, physical diagram, selected objects only, and you'll see that there are no relationships. I'd like to create a join between my revenues and all these other tables. Okay, so this is what's known as the star schema, where revenues is going to be kind of in the middle here. Okay, might not look perfectly like a star, but that's the general idea. So we're going to have an arrow pointing from revenues to offices, from revenues to customers, and so on. So the way we do that is we click on this new join, click on revenues first, and then offices. So left-hand side offices, right-hand side revenues. What do they have in common? Well, it's the office key. So office key right here, and office key right here. Down here it shows us exactly how they're joined, and now I can go ahead and just hit OK. So now we have an arrow there. Let's do another one. Okay, now this is between revenues and customers. So I want to find my customer key and my customer key. Let's do employees, employee key, employee key, and then finally products. Let's find our product key and product key. Okay, so here's our star schema. So now I can X out of here, and now when I right click on here again and I just say, oh, just show the selected objects only, it shows us here's our star. Okay, so now what do we want to do on this layer? Well, I'm going to right click and create a new business model, and in here I'm going to just call this BI sample model. Right now it's empty, but I can drag and drop whatever I'm interested in including. So I'm going to drag over all of those aliases. Now, what you could do if you have possibly a join on two different tables, you can actually join them together and make them appear as one table in here, but that's beyond the scope of this video here. Okay, so I want you to observe something. Notice the icons here. Revenues is the only one that has a pound sign on it. Okay, so that shows us that that is a fact table, whereas the others do not have pounds. So how did it know that that was a fact table? Well, it just so happened. It's because of the relationships, the joins, that it understood that. So if we did not have the joins in there, then all of these would appear as fact tables and it wouldn't behave properly. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is right click and look at the business model diagram. Here's our whole diagram. What's interesting here is on the business model and mapping layer, that middle layer there that we were dealing with, when you double click on these arrows, which shows you the logical joins, it does not focus on the columns that you're joining on. In fact, it doesn't even show you what column it's joined on. All we care about is left-hand side we have revenues, right-hand side we have products. It's an inner join, and here's the cardinality. So for each revenue, we have 0 or 1 products, and for each product, we have any number of revenues. Okay, so when you're looking at the diagram on the physical layer here, and you double click on these arrows, notice that you do see what they're joined on. So there's a big difference between physical joins and logical joins. Okay, so now that we have this, I'm just going to deal with the default presentation layer. Okay, so when I drag that over, it's almost a direct reflection. Now on many different layers, we could, on many different levels, we could define the permission levels, but we're not going to mess around with that right now. Let's just save what we have, make sure that it's in a good state, and then we're going to make this our current schema, okay, or our current repository. So I'm going to do a save. Do I want to check for global consistency? Absolutely. It says that the business model is consistent, so yes, we want to mark it available for queries. Okay, no errors, good. So now I'm going to exit out of here. Now I'm going to actually log in. This is an error because I just started up the analyses, and it just wasn't ready yet. If I hit refresh, it should be fine. Okay, so you can see that right now, if I log in and I start to create a new analysis, when I say, for example, new analysis, it's showing me all these different subject areas, which, I mean, this has nothing to do with the repository that I just created. At any given moment, you can your OBIEE instance can only have one current repository. So that repository that I just created, I want to make that current. So the way we quote-unquote swap out the repository is that we have to go to the Enterprise Manager Fusion control. Okay, so we go there by going to our localhost :port number /EM. It stands for Enterprise Manager. We're going to log in as an administrator there. So WebLogic and the password. And once we get logged in, we're going to take a look at our business intelligence environment. Okay, so left-hand side, business intelligence. Here's core application. Okay, here's deployment, and then repository. So this is the screen where we can swap out the repository. Everything is grayed out because I need to lock and edit the configuration. There's a locking mechanism in there so you don't have two different administrators trying to swap out the repository at the same time. Okay, so here I'm just going to click on this repository file right here, and I'm going to now go to the location where I saved that repository. Okay, so remember it was under My Files. There's my RPD file. And then I provide the password of my repository. Okay, so this is where I'm setting the password of my repository. And as far as the catalog location is where we are storing our different objects such as analyses and dashboards and actions and such. So I'm going to just select the My Files directory that already exists, and then under that I'm going to say My Catalog. I want to make sure that My Catalog doesn't already exist, okay, because when we make this live, it should automatically create this directory for me. Okay, so now that I have that, let me go up here. I'm going to hit Apply and then activate my changes. Okay, now I hit close, and it tells me, hey, you need to restart to apply the recent changes. What it means by restarting is we have to restart the OBIEE processes. So the easiest way to do that is just at the command line. You issue the OPMN control command, so OPMNCTL. If you say stop all, it stops all of the processes. By the way, you can also issue this indirectly through the graphical interface. If you click on availability, you can say restart all. I've just found that it's actually a little bit faster through the command line. Okay, so now I'm going to say OPMNCTL start all. This sometimes will take up to a minute. Once this is finished, I'm then going to say OPMNCTL status to ensure that the status is good. So you'll see that all 5 of our OBIEE processes are alive and well. So now let's test this. I'm now going to go to my analyses and dashboards here. I'm going to sign out. I need to refresh the screen. I'm going to sign back in. And then when I create a new analysis, check this out. Here's the subject area that I created. When I click on that, here's what's available. And now I'm going to drag over whatever I'm interested in. So I'm interested in the office, how about the company and the office. Okay. If I click on results, it shows me company and office. Now let's bring in some measures. If you look at the revenues here, you'll see that these aren't exactly measures yet. These are not aggregated yet. And so if I drag over, for example, revenue, I want you to see what happens. We might get some duplicate data. So here I have several entries for revenue. Instead of having multiple entries, what I'd like to do is aggregate all of this so I get the sum. So I need to make a little modification in my repository. So I can just leave this screen here. I'm going to connect to my repository in online mode. So when you connect in online mode, you're connecting to the current repository. So I put in my repository password and then my administrator user and password. Okay, and now I'm interested in, let's see, and here the revenues. If I double click on this revenue here and check it out, under aggregation, right now it says none. I'm going to turn that into sum. And then for the units, I also want to do that. I'm going to say sum. Okay, so now if I expand on this level, I know it's kind of hard to see because there's some check marks, but these are now measures on this end as well. I'm going to save what I have so far, check in my changes, check for global consistency, and see how these icons have changed to indicate that they're measures. This is like a little gold bar. It looks like a ruler. It's a measure. Okay, so I made the change in here online. I simply go back to my browser right here. I'm going to reload the server metadata, and then I'm going to refresh my display. And you can see here that revenue and units are now measures. Here I'm going to pull over the offices and then the revenues. And you can see that we have this information here. And if I wanted to bring over another measure, I could do that. For example, if I was interested in units, I can do that as well. Oops, let me just drag that over. So that is the very basics of a repository. Now, we haven't included any hierarchies or anything like that. I mean, this is a very, very simple repository. In a separate video, we'll show you how to create hierarchies, dimensions. Okay? Okay, well, I hope you found this video tutorial very useful. Please visit our website at www.fireboxtraining.com.